gathered in the Oak Room. Thank you very much for being here. This is a very important meeting, and let's get started. Commissioner Grimm, will you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
Happily. Please stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Francine, would you call the roll, please?
Absolutely. Commissioner Borghi?
Here.
Commissioner Fotheringham?
Here.
Commissioner Grimm?
Present.
Commissioner Healy? Here. Commissioner Loomis? Happy New Year. Commissioner Norkin?
Here.
Commissioner Shentis? Commissioner Searden?
Here.
And Commissioner Silberberg? Here. Thank you.
Well, again, welcome. This is going to be a very exciting program and a very timely program. And at this time, I'd like to turn you over to the commissioner who put this amazing panel together, Nancy Healy. Nancy?
Okay. I'd love to extend the welcome that Jim just did. I'm thrilled with the turnout we have. I'd also like to take this chance to invite you guys to come to any of our meetings. We have a televised meeting the first Wednesday of every month. We do some excellent...
Excuse me, Nancy, could I interrupt
Yep.
you for a moment?
Yep.
Chair has made a mistake here.
Yep.
And we'll get right back
All
to
right.
you. I skipped over public comments.
Oh.
My apologies. Carol Freeman from Senior Concerns, a very good friend of our senior community. Carol.
Audience that's here and next door and watching at home. I'm Carol Freeman from Senior Concerns, resident of Thousand Oaks, and I just wanted to bring your attention to another educational program you might have interest in. It's next Tuesday evening at Senior Concerns at 7 o'clock, and the title of it is Eat Well, Live Well. I don't know about everybody else here and or watching at home, but I've discovered that as I have too many more birthdays, what I used to eat doesn't serve me as well as it used to. More of it seems to turn to fat, and I need to adjust my eating. I also have to figure out how to match that cholesterol diet with the diabetic diet with the, I need this diet, and figure out how to do all that. Hopefully the information that's going to be presented that evening will help you do that. It's at 7 o'clock, Senior Concerns on Houghton Camp Road, next Tuesday, January 11th. For those who are here, I have brought a flyer and put it on the table over here at the side. Thank you. Thanks for the time.
Thank you, Carol. Our next public speaker is Audrey Faloga. Did I get it right, Audrey?
Yes, you did.
Thank you.
I want to wish everybody a very happy and a good new year. And I spoke before, I'm from the Ranch Mobile Home Park where they want to raise our rent over 400%. Our hearing has been continued until the 24th of January, 4 o'clock at the Share Forum downstairs. And we appreciate anybody to please come and to help us in support of us about the ridiculous price of the rent that they want to raise. Thank you.
Thank you. And now, Nancy, please, back to our program.
Okay. Yeah, you did. Okay. Just welcome to this one, and please feel free to come to any of them. We have a program the first Wednesday and the third. We have a plain meeting the third Wednesday, but we have a televised program the first Wednesday of every month, and we really have had some excellent programs, very educational things. In terms of the long-term care issue, I was really unaware of the magnitude of this issue until I became a long-term care ombudsman in the county. And this group is a group that we are advocates for the residents of care facilities. And we go visit the facilities not just to visit the residents, but to also make certain that their rights and what they want is being observed, that it's being respected, that they are being respected. And that can be it can be difficult. So This is just a huge issue. If anybody has cells on, besides mine, probably we could just cut them off. But this is just going to be such a huge issue as our senior population grows, and knowledge is the very best thing you can have to help you be able to work with this program. Today we have an extremely highly qualified panel and moderator, all of whom have volunteered their time, and I personally want to thank them for working with me all fall pretty much to put together what they're doing today, because they recognize the importance of this information. And another little thing that just might be a personal information that I think I learned when I started being an ombudsman, that 60% of people in California facilities have no visitors at all. That means they sit all day without people visiting them. So if any of you have friends or relatives, or you just want to volunteer at one of these places to brighten somebody's day, they will be rewarded by your visit. But believe me, you will be rewarded a lot more. I always come away when I go to these places feeling a whole lot better than when I went. So just something to remember. I'm going to turn it over to Andrea, Andrea Gallagher is going to be our moderator. I'm going to give you a little bit about her background, and she will introduce the rest of our extremely qualified panel. Andrea is an advocate for seniors of all ages in our community. She is an active board member of Senior Concerns, a member of our Senior Adult Master Plan Committee, and a member of Moving Seniors Forward. Andrea's firm, Rethinking Your Future, helps people ages 50 and over create a plan for their future. Andrea is a national speaker and author. She writes a bi-monthly column for the Thousand Oaks Acorn called The Other Side of 50. And again, thank you to each of your panel members and Andrea for all the work that you guys have put in, and I know you have. And I'll turn it over to Andrea to get started. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nancy, and thank you, Council on Aging, for allowing us the opportunity to share information on this very important topic today. It's a topic that's near and dear to my heart, a short story. A number of years ago, my husband and I moved into a neighborhood here in Westlake and became friends with Fred and Hildy. Both were in their mid-80s. They had no children and no relatives. Hildy was legally blind from macular degeneration, and she was in a wheelchair due to crippling arthritis. Fred was her caregiver. At the age of 83, he drove his car, did the grocery shopping, he did all the laundry and all the cooking. One morning, Hildy called us and asked if we could drive Fred to the hospital. He needed a routine procedure. After 2 hours in the waiting room, the doctor came out and told us that Fred's kidneys had failed, and he would be hospitalized for at least 2 weeks. In a matter of minutes, we were confronted with the fact that Hildy could not live at home alone, and both she and Fred had no plans in place for this eventuality. Fortunately, they had us. My husband Peter and I moved into Fred and Hildy's spare room. I took time off of work, and we cared for Hildy through the crisis. When Fred was better, we had a conversation. Much of the conversation you'll hear today. A few facts. The 2010 census revealed that more elders are living alone these days than ever before. In 1960, 19% of those over 65 lived alone. Today, it's over 35%. Of all the older persons living alone, 77% are women, most often due to widowhood. According to the World Health Organization, the combination of the population aging and the erosion of extended family due to moving, divorce, death, chronic health issues, has challenged our assumptions about who will and can help us as we age. Just because a person has grown older doesn't mean he's ready to give up his hard-won independence, even when a crisis occurs and when the individual's health and safety are at risk. So as you listen to the speakers today, listen for the following. When will I know that I or my loved ones can no longer live alone? What kind of things do I need to consider in determining options? What conversations do I need to have and with whom? And who will help carry out my plan when I'm no longer able? Okay, I'd like to introduce you to our distinguished panel. Kathy Terry has worked in elder care field for almost 10 years. During this time, she's returned to school to earn her master's degree with an emphasis in gerontology to enhance her ability to advocate for the frail and vulnerable seniors of Ventura County through the Long-Term Care Ombudsman's Program. Vicki Kind is a clinical bioethicist, medical educator, and hospice volunteer. Her book, The Caregiver's Path to Compassionate Decision-Making, Making Choices for Those Who Can't, guides families and healthcare professionals throughout the difficult process of making decisions for those who are losing or have lost their ability to think. She has also been a caregiver for many years for 4 members of her family. Carol Knowles is a long-term care insurance professional based in Thousand Oaks, who is affiliated with the state as well as the largest independent brokerage in California. She has a background in medicine and is a cancer survivor herself, who has been able to help many individuals with complicated medical histories. Additionally, Carol is a certified public speaker and published writer, and she uses those skills to promote a better understanding of the numerous options available to preparing for future needs. And lastly, Bob Triplett is an established attorney in Thousand Oaks who concentrates in the areas of estate planning, wills, trust, powers of attorney, elder law, probate, and trust administration. That's a mouthful. Bob's firm prides itself in providing clients with legal family security, which results in great peace of mind. Bob is co-founder of the organization Moving Seniors Forward, Community Resource Networking Group, which is a local organization of professionals who provide services, products, and information to enhance the lives of seniors and their families. Welcome, speakers. So let's get started. Kathy, if you could talk to us about the ideal that most of us have in our heads about where and how we'll live as we age.
Thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity to meet with all these fine people who see there is definitely a need in our society for attention and education in this area. I think many of you, if you take a moment and meditate on this, you will realize you have a vision, what you expect your aging to be like. I took a death and dying class when I was working towards my degree, and the professor had us write what we thought the end of our life would be like. And of course, I'm sure as many of you, we all determined that we would live very healthily, and one day we'll crawl into bed and we'll never wake up. That's the dream way of dying, and most of us, that's our vision. The aging process is very similar. At a certain age, before some of the telltale signs of aging occur, I'm in the baby boomer age now, and so I'm starting to experience my body letting me down in ways that are shocking and anxiety-provoking, I will admit. But until that happened, I had a vision as well. Despite evidence to the contrary, looking at my elder relatives and seeing that it didn't quite go as peacefully as I thought, I had a vision that I would feel 25 until I was 95, 100 years old, and then I would go to bed and never wake up. The truth is, that's not going to be the average person's experience. It can be much improved through educating yourself and listening to the experts out there. But that's one of the reasons we came together today, to talk about some of the resources and information you need to make this journey be as healthful and comfortable as possible. Thanks. You're welcome.
Vicki, maybe you could talk to us a little about some of the warning signs that your loved one might not be able to live at home alone anymore, and maybe what categories of needs should be considered.
Absolutely. I find that there are many ways that we realize, this person is no longer safe to stay home. 3 main categories are, thank you.
Is your light on?
I can't tell if it's
push it.
green. It's happy or green. There's green and then there's happy or green. Okay, hi. Anyway, there are 3 main categories that I look at whether someone's going to be safe to stay home alone or if they're going to need care in their house or in a care community. The first is physical. Now, it may not be that your mind is going, but maybe your body is. Maybe you're falling more. Maybe you're really tipping over a lot and you're having to hold on to the walls. Maybe you're just losing strength. My aunt had multiple sclerosis, sharp, great lady, but at a certain point, she couldn't stand to finish doing the dishes. She couldn't stand and support herself to take care of her personal needs. And so some of these symptoms physically may say, we need help. We also may just become more than our loved ones can help us with. You know, just because we love the person we're taking care of doesn't mean we're trained to handle their medical needs, and sometimes more help is needed. There can be mental issues. It could be as simple as loneliness. You know, sometimes being isolated at home is more than you want to live with because you can't get out, you can't be a social, but maybe a care community where you have friends and a community might be better for you. But we also have a lot of dementia, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's with dementia issues. And then we're now looking at sometimes the safety of this person. Maybe they're not remembering to eat. They're not remembering to take their medicines, or they're taking 3 pills instead of 1. Maybe they're not managing their finances or their bills. That's a common thing we see early on, but because nobody sees us write our bills, nobody knows it's happening. But people will be paying their bills multiple times, or they're not paying them at all. And the family comes in after that medical crisis and says, what's been going on? But it's been going on a long time. We also have elder abuse issues. Sometimes someone's not safe to stay home because it's not a safe environment for them. The last category is safety. I get a lot of calls from people that say, my mom wants to stay home, but she keeps leaving the stove on and all of her pots are burnt and the house caught on fire. Can she stay home? No. No, I mean, you really, you need a full-time caregiver there, or that person needs support. People become vulnerable. People become vulnerable because either their physical condition is changing or their mental condition is changing. A lot of times people are getting lost. There are more car accidents. Like if you're watching a loved one and they come home and the car has more dents and more dents, it's like, wait a minute, what's going on? So there are a lot of symptoms, but a lot of times we don't want to see them because it changes our reality. Oh, categories also, the second question for you. The categories of needs may be kind of covered today. You might have medical needs. You might have social or psychological needs. Sometimes you have legal issues, finances. We're going to cover these today. So you have to look at the big picture of this person's life. You can't just solve one part and assume everything else will fall into place. That's why I'm really impressed with all the people who are here today and listening at home, that you realize you've got to build a good aging life plan. It's not about how bad it's going to be for you, but it's about making it better, and we're here to help.
Wonderful. Thank you. Carol, maybe you can talk to us a little bit about what are the odds facing someone needing extended need, and at what age should we consider having a plan in place?
Thank you for asking. First and foremost, what has just previously been said, it's like, hear, hear. I wholeheartedly support. I am my mother's trustee, and she is in a long-term care situation. It's very trying. She is 2,100 miles away. And so we just went through a major incident this last week. What are the odds of facing a situation? Well, in truth, they're either 0 or 100%. There is no middle road. You cannot take what happened to your family as a guideline or a map for what your life end might be like. Having said that, look at your parents or friends who are falling into a long-term care need and recognize you may be seeing yourself in the mirror. The long-term care insurance industry, or those companies that help people financially prepare for long-term care situations, do not take into consideration your family history. But if you are genetically predispositioned perhaps to diabetes or cancer, don't wait to have an event and then try to get some protection. It's not going to happen. It's rather like being in an automobile accident and then trying to get coverage after the fact. It can't be done. So the odds are 0 or 100%. Statistically, nationwide, 1 out of every 3 of us will need some kind of help between the age of 65 and 80. 50% of us will fall into a position of need after the age of 80, and undoubtedly the people who are spared the long-term care need will find themselves as being caregivers. In closing, or to move on, one statistic that I think you will find very shocking, I know I did, is that 41% of those currently in a long-term care situation are between the ages of 18 and 64. This is not just about getting older. Regarding the age at which you should get a plan, a lot of people, younger people, are seeing mom and dad, grandma and grandpa falling into a long-term care situation. They're concerned about their own futures because they don't know what the future of Medicare, Social Security, whether or not they're going to have pension plans of their own, like a lot of the baby boomer generation has benefited from or their parents have had. So they are acting in their 40s. Once you get a plan together with the carrier, they cannot change your premiums because you're getting older or your health changes. So these are serious considerations, and the cost is infinitely less.
Right.
When she says this question, can you just repeat it, please?
Yes.
Thanks.
Go ahead. Your question?
When I was about 56, I took out long-term care, and of course the prices escalated. However, right now, the firm that I'm with is in reorganization. Now they're saying that they're paying their bills and yada yada yada, and it cost me $195 a month, which comes out of my automatic savings. However, I felt I took the appropriate action, and now I'm a little scared.
So I'm going to condense that, if that's okay. She's taken out long-term care insurance. However, now her carrier is in reorganization, and she's concerned as to the future of her policy.
May I address that?
Yes, please.
No company can go out of business and turn its back on existing policy holders. It is against the law. There is a pool of funds at the level of the company and as well as also at the state level to honor the potential needs of existing policy holders. So I would not be concerned about that. And I'd be happy to talk with you after if you'd like a little bit more information.
Great. Another question?
Related question. We've had long-term care insurance for 20 years, a little over 20 years, paying annual premiums, which has stayed the same until 2 years ago, and it went up 20%. Mm-hmm. This year it went up another 25%. How are we to expect in the future?
So if I could rephrase that. I've had a long-term care policy. This gentleman has had a long-term care policy for quite a while. His policy amount was the same. Like up until 2 years ago, it increased 20%, and last year 25%. What should he think is going to happen in the future?
The state will limit how much a carrier can raise the rates. And know that, again, any rate increases are across the board. You cannot be singled out as an individual. But look at it this way. Essentially, when you got your coverage initially, you paid the price of a beat-up old jalopy and were given the keys to a Bentley because you were given access to a very large pool of money and help right away. So the cost went up a little bit, but you still got quite a deal.
We'll take one more question, and then we'll move on.
Long-term care insurance companies, are some more likely to increase their premiums than others? Because we have one, and we were told that they have not increased their premiums in all their years they've done business in California. So that's why we went with that company.
So there's a company that this gentleman went with that had not increased their premiums ever to their customers, and is that a fact? Are there some that increase their premiums and others that don't?
Some have a better track record for no increases than others, and this is something that you should inquire about if you're looking into getting some kind of coverage. No carrier will ever put in writing that they will never raise the rates on existing policyholders. Having said that, again, just try to keep in mind the benefit, potential benefit of the coverage that you've gotten at a very low cost, and the difference that it can make in the quality of your care and the burden on your family that it would relieve.
Thank you. There may be some more questions on this topic, and we are going to have time at the end for questions, so I wanted to invite you later on also to ask more if you had more on that topic. For myself, it seemed for my husband and I that sometimes in Fred and Hildy's case there was clearly denial going on. Fred had not considered that his health would ever be at risk and that that would put both he and Hildy in jeopardy. So Vicki, my question to you is, how does denial by a senior or the family fit into this process? And when do most people make decisions, ahead of time or in crisis?
Unfortunately, most people get the call, like you have, like I have, that, oh, your mom or dad is now in the emergency room. You need to come here because someone's got to be in charge. I know this has happened to many of my friends where all of a sudden we are thrown into that caregiver role. And so many times I work with families one after another that say, we never had the conversation. I always meant to. She wouldn't talk about it. So people are not planning ahead of time. That's why we're doing this today, to at least begin thinking about maybe we should talk differently. So denial is a big issue. Denial is actually a wonderful thing that our brain does to protect us from things we don't want to face. You know, it's actually a coping strategy, and I'm glad we have it, because sometimes when it's so painful to see the truth, our brain says, you're not ready, don't look at it. But it leaves that senior very vulnerable. That senior is not getting appropriate care, either because they can't see the truth of the changes or their family members can't admit that things have changed. And people have two categories. They either don't actually see it or they don't want to see it. Now, I know that I've traveled to see family and friends that I haven't seen their kids in years. And then you see the kids, and they grow a lot. You know, all of a sudden when you haven't seen someone for a year or two, wow, your kids are so big. Well, that same thing happens. If you're seeing a relative on the day-to-day basis every couple weeks, you don't notice the changes. And when we're living in our own bodies, until something more drastic comes up, we don't feel those changes. It just kind of slips and it keeps changing. So that's the first problem, is we don't see it because we actually can't. One thing you can do is to either ask yourself or ask yourself about your loved one, am I able to do the things I used to a year ago? How are things different? Am I not getting out as much as I used to? Am I taking more naps? Whatever it is, what has changed? The second part is, a lot of times our children of aging parents don't want to see it. They want to be able to turn to mom and dad. Mom and dad are the people they go to for emotional support, financial support, you know, all the caregiving that they need, but all of a sudden the roles are changing. And the adult child has to face the reality that now you are the giver of care. You're not just taking from your parents. And a lot of adult children don't want to give that up. And so again, that senior is vulnerable, and they're not getting the support they need. The last category of denial that I see is from physicians. I have a lot of physicians. The family will come in and say, Mom at home is doing this and this. Do you think that's okay? The dementia is getting worse. And the doctor either doesn't have the time or doesn't make the effort or doesn't believe the caregiver. And then, again, they don't get appropriate health care. And the same thing happens with regarding dying. Most physicians won't tell you that your end is approaching. And so they don't give you the opportunity to make peace with families, to get your affairs in orders, to go on that trip you've always wanted to go on. And so we're relying on others to tell us it's time to make new decisions, where we need to be more responsible and not wait for others. Do right for yourself.
Great. And Kathy, how can the family step in? What should the role of the family be?
Well, as we all know, as good Americans, we really honor the cowboy spirit. We're a country that was built on independence. We broke away to be independent. We value that as a society. We value that as individuals. So it's very difficult when you've got that value system as a society to give up that independence. And it's extremely important to respect that desire for independence and how you approach a senior. So very carefully. You need to prepare yourself. You need to educate yourself. There are a lot of opportunities for education. There's an author, David Soley, who wrote a book on communicating with your elders, and it helps to to give you the verbiage and to keep in context their cohort, where they were in the time cycle, what their value system was, so that we don't place our value system there. So you need to be prepared. You need to be respectful. You need not to make presumptions. We have to be extremely careful in our society as well about ageism. It's really interesting that we're all going to, well, if we're lucky, we're all going to get to the point where we will experience ageism. People who make opinions about us based on our age, and they're not always good. And so as we approach an elderly person, not only your parents, but if you are helping a neighbor or someone else in your community, to always be checking your presumptions and what assumptions you're making just based on a number. And realize there's a person there. There's much more than an age there. And our parents are resistant to giving up that role of authority in our family, and it's important not to infantilize them. It can become so simple. I remember reading an Irma Bombeck essay once, and she talked about taking her mom on a flight on a plane and scolding her mom, "Mom, get your sweater on," and scolding her and treating her like a small child, and then suddenly she heard herself. And she realized she could be the one being scolded someday by her children. And so always to be respectful. So to approach with respect and with information. There you go.
Thank you. About 5 years ago, my father-in-law had 3 car accidents in a row. And we were very fortunate. It was actually one of the police department folks that contacted us and said, "I think there's a problem here, and I don't think it has to do with traffic." And we from actually the police department, my father-in-law went directly to the hospital, and he was diagnosed with moderate dementia at that point in time. And I think contributing to that was the denial by his wife, my mother-in-law, because she didn't drive. And that was her only mode of transportation. So at first, we recognized, okay, my father-in-law has dementia, and we're going to have to be careful about how he participates in his decision-making. And sometimes his mind was confused and in a jumble. And then he'd have great moments of clarity. So Vicki, how does a family determine if their family member is able to make decisions for themselves about their care? And what should we do when some days your loved one can think clearly and other days they can't?
Yeah, that's a very common scenario. So what we're talking about, in medicine we call it decisional capacity. We use the word capacity because we're not judges. When we talk to our lawyer in a few minutes, you'll hear more about competency. That's what a judge determines. But since none of us are judges, we say capacity. Now, in bioethics, we actually use what's called a sliding scale for decision-making and for determining capacity, because somebody can have enough brain ability to choose what they want to watch on TV, what ice cream they want to eat, because even if they're not functioning very high, someone with moderate dementia is not making important decisions, but they can be involved in their day-to-day decisions. We're talking more about those times when their safety's at risk. Should they be driving? Should they be making medical choices, end-of-life decisions, housing decisions? So in those situations, they have to have enough capacity to be able to pass a few tests. So the questions we use in medicine to see if someone is capable and is able to still make their own decisions: do they understand there's a decision to be made? Do they understand the situation? Do they understand the options that are being offered them? And this applies whether it's a housing option or a medical option. Can they use their values and what's important to them and apply it to this situation? So say someone like my mom would say, "I love living in my home. I don't want to live somewhere else." But as her mental capacity changed after a stroke, she started getting very confused. So if she said to me, "Oh, let's have me move to a nursing home," I'd be like, that doesn't make sense. That's not your value system. So the decision has to make sense based on who they are. If that's starting to slip, then we know their capacity is slipping. They have to be able to verbalize their choice or write it down or some way communicate This is what I would like to do. And if it doesn't make sense, their decision, they're not fully with us. Now, the issue of fluctuating capacity, because for a lot of people, we have better days and we have worse. So what we do in medicine is that on the days when that person's doing really well, they get a loud voice in their life. They get more choice. They get more choice in more serious issues. But on the days when he wasn't doing as well, when he was much more vulnerable to his dementia, he should be only making those ice cream decisions. And it's not to disempower him, it's to protect him. So when we're looking at this, it's not to say you are less than because you're old or you've changed. It's we're just watching out for you. But we're going to include you in the things that are easily managed. I know when my dad had to move to a care community, he had moderate dementia at the time. He mentally was probably 5 or 6 mentally. I picked the place. I made sure we could afford it. I made sure they had good nursing care there. I did all the high-level decisions. But I took him there a couple times to visit so he'd be comfortable. And I said, Dad, which room do you want? They have 3 different rooms available. That was an easy thing. It was safe for him to choose. So that's how you can keep someone included, but you adjust on a daily basis depending on where they are.
Great. Thank you. Bob, how does the law come into play when issues of capacity arise?
Well, in law, capacity is a big issue, obviously. The law will require that we have certain requisites of capacity to do a particular act. So we have to have a certain degree of capacity to perform a certain act. And the capacities for certain actions differ. So, for instance, the capacity to create a contract is something different than the capacity to sign a will. For a will, we're even allowed lucid moments. So we can get a lucid moment and have a valid will. The determination of when somebody has capacity or lacks capacity is the million-dollar question, and it gets very difficult from time to time to determine what that is. We'll ask a series of questions sometimes. Sometimes we'll have to refer on out to a physician, a neurologist. I had a client several years ago, older woman, that came in, and I sat down with her, and she could not tell me the month that we were in, the year that we were in, the president that we had, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, where are we going with this one? But she could tell me the names of her kids, the number of kids, the fact that she wanted child 1 to act for her, and through a series of questions, she could also tell me how she wanted to be cared for. So that was rather mind-blowing. So we invited her back for a second go. And so I had another attorney in the office sit in, and we asked her a different series of questions, totally different way to make sure that we weren't saying things certain ways and she could answer. And I'll be doggone if she didn't do the same thing. She couldn't tell us the month or the year, but she could tell us all about the kids. So you have that situation, and it becomes very interesting. Also, the capacity issue is becoming more and more important because we're seeing more and more people question capacity. We have a case in our office right now that's a trust dispute. We have a father who left his trust 50-50 to his son and to his daughter. The thing is he did an amendment to his trust, and in the amendment he left everything to the son in further trust, meaning that the son didn't get the assets outright. Whereas for the sister, he left everything outright to her. So guess who's upset? Brother is having a problem with that. So what does brother do? He asserts incapacity on the part of father at the time that he did it. He is citing such things that a physician did examine Dad, and in the report, Dad was complaining of memory loss. And the report of the physician was that could be the beginning signs of dementia. Well, memory loss does not constitute incapacity. So we had to, at least that's his assertions. What he's forgetting about is that Dad sold his house, and Dad moved into a active senior facility here in Thousand Oaks that does not handle dementia patients. So a doctor had to examine Dad before he could even be admitted. And the physician said, come on in. So he passed the test. There's also a nurse there on premises that continues to monitor Dad. And there were no negative reports for a period of 3 years. So we wish brother luck. Nonetheless, there we're in a contest. if we do cross the line into incapacity, then we really don't want to hear the words of Apollo 13, Houston, we have a problem. As an attorney, my goal is to always have your voice heard, whether you're competent, incompetent, or deceased. And we want to empower you to be the one in control. But in order to do that, you have to be proactive. And you have to do it at a time when you have capacity. So please act now with anything that you plan on doing, because you're not going to be younger or healthier than you are today. A question that I have for people in the audience, then, okay, how protected are we? Raise of hands. How many of you here have a durable power of attorney for assets and health care? That's phenomenal. That's super. If you do, make sure that you have it updated about every 5 years, because law changes, you change, your agents change, etc. For those of you that don't have durable powers of attorney, then you need to get them, and you need to get them now, because, again, you're not getting younger, and you have to have capacity when you sign the documents. Another question to all of you. How many of you would like to be involved in a court process? Now, maybe you didn't hear me. How many of you really would want to be a part of a court process? Nobody. Okay, that's a good answer. I wouldn't either. I want to introduce you to the California Probate Code. It's about 1,100 pages of very exciting reading. And this is the probate code for the informed people, and this is the probate code for the uninformed people. Now, do you see any difference between informed and uninformed? It's the same code. So what we have to do is, for those that want to be informed, we want to be able to take advantage of the code and be proactive, rather than be uninformed and default to the code, because it's probably not going to be as pleasant as what you might believe. In this code, there are certain words in here called durable powers of attorney. So we want to take advantage of that law and use it for us. Well, what's a durable power of attorney? It allows you, as a principal, which most of you here know about, which is great, you get to appoint somebody to be your agent, to be able to make decisions for you in the event that you're unable to do so. The person that you appoint as your agent should be thought about carefully when you appoint, and should be re-examined every time that you re-examine your document. Because sometimes things change. Kids change, friends change, etc. So make sure that you weigh that carefully. If we have a durable power of attorney, if we get Houston, we have a problem, then we can call back and say, we have a solution, and it's a durable power of attorney. Now, the durable power of attorney comes in two forms. The first is assets. Okay? That deals with your money, your bank accounts, your house, your stock, your investments, your retirement accounts, your life insurance. In a durable power of attorney for assets, the agent that you appoint can pay your bills, can sell an asset for you, continue insurance that you might require. They can also pay your taxes. Your taxes aren't going to go away. You're still going to have to pay them. And if there was ever a tax audit, you're probably happy that you are incapacitated because you don't have to do it. But somebody is going to have to answer to the IRS. Also, Social Security benefits. What happens if those stopped all of a sudden? Who's going to be able to say, hey, what's going on? So that's what the agent is able to do under that. Oh, and then some people get the idea of, well, maybe I should change title and just put my son on the house so that he can make all the decisions. I'm not going to go into that today. That's a whole new seminar on title. But if you ever consider that, get some good advice before you ever do it. Okay? Then we have a healthcare power of attorney. And the healthcare power of attorney deals with your person. I want to make sure everybody on the council was still awake. Jim's smiling. Okay. With the healthcare power of attorney, then you're appointing your agent to be able to make a medical decision for you if you're incapable or unable to do so. You remember the Terry Schiavo case? Remember that one? What's the problem there? We've got a young married person for, what was it, like some 15 years or something, was on life support. Husband said, ultimately, I want to take her off the machine. Parents said, no, I want to have her on the machine. And she had no power of attorney, which now is basically called a Healthcare Directive. Since she had none, it went up and became a Supreme Court case. I don't think any of us, since we don't want court involvement, want to take it all the way to the Supreme Court. So the Healthcare Directive is essential so that your intentions regarding life support, the administration of food and water, the ability to make anatomical gifts are well documented in a legal document that will be followed in the event you have incapacity. Again, for people that don't do anything, they have the good intentions. And we get the calls from ICU, the frantic call, oh my goodness, my husband is here, we've done nothing, can you help? And sometimes we can without court, and sometimes it requires court. But that's not the time to be thinking about, oh my God, what didn't I do? So you need to have these documents. If we don't do anything in Houston, we have a problem, and it's a big problem. And guess what? We're back here on the uninformed probate code, which also has a big section on conservatorships. And conservatorships are court proceedings. And that's where then somebody has to petition the court to be named as the conservator for a particular person. And once you're in conservatorship court, you don't get out. The court appoints you, they decide, and if it's over assets, you have to then account for all the money, all the assets that you're taking over. You have to account every 2 years to the court in their form. And if they don't like it, they will tell you, and you'll have to come back again. Every 2 years, you have to file this account. We had a client 24 years old that became incapacitated. Was a quadriplegic. His mother became the conservator. Every 2 years, she has to come into court. He could live a long time. She would much prefer not to be in that court. So the durable powers of attorney, essential. The last document is the HIPAA form. And the HIPAA form is the authorization for the release of medical information. Because we have medical privacy laws that kind of ran amok, and if your medical information is divulged without your authorization, the medical people can be fined. So they are getting very close-lipped about this. So therefore, you need the HIPAA form to say, I want you to be able to talk to this person, and this person.
Thank you. Another question?
Yeah, before I was divorced, my husband and I...
I'm going to give you a microphone.
Okay.
If that's okay.
Before I was divorced, my husband and I developed a trust, and everything was fine. Then we got divorced, and in our divorce, and we left everything to each other. In our divorce decree, it was the same thing, that we were leaving both to each other. Then my husband decided in the last year that he didn't think about the trust, I guess, and I don't know if he thought about the divorce decree, but he wrote his own will, wrote me out, and wrote in our children. Us all.
And you don't like that?
Not perfectly.
Well, we'd have to get into that more. The divorce decree, though, to me, would have a lot of weight here.
I thought
and so I think that we potentially have a violation of that.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. A brief Fred and Hildy story, and then I have the next question talking about capacity. Fred and Hildy were each other's power of attorney. Their will actually was created in the military. Fred was a lieutenant colonel in the Air Force and had created his will and power of attorney and all that stuff many, many years ago. And here he was in intensive care in the hospital, and we were home with Hildy, and we got a phone call from the hospital, and they said, Fred needs a blood transfusion, and we need your permission. Could you please put Hildy on the phone? And so I put Hildy on the phone. She was lying in bed, and I put her on the phone, and I said, Hildy, they need your permission to give Fred a blood transfusion. And she said, okay, yes, that would be fine. She handed me the phone, she closed her eyes, and she put out her arm. And that is when I realized that she was no longer able to be his power of attorney. Fortunately, Fred pulled through, and we were able to work with another attorney to get him the right folks who could, my husband and I, who could help make decisions for him. But she was obviously no longer capable of doing that. So the important point is to keep that up. So, Kathy, I'd like you to share with us a little bit about some of your experience in the Ombudsman's office with power of attorneys.
Yes, this is a really challenging area, an area where we do quite a bit of work as an ombudsman program with misunderstandings about what power of attorney over health care, which is where we typically get involved, not typically with the financial end, but we will have miscommunication, misunderstanding from the facility about when a power of attorney kicks in and what exact powers that starts, and the misunderstanding by the family members about what that means. A power of attorney over health care can kick in immediately, and you can immediately give your agent the power to make decisions, or when you are no longer able to make decisions for yourself, which is a program we encourage you to make your decisions as long as you can. One of the major issues that we see occurring with power of attorneys used incorrectly is familial issues. And a crisis occurs when your parents get to a certain age and they get into a facility, and all sorts of psychodynamics tend to rear their heads. And if you remember that line from the Smothers Brothers, Mom always liked you best, we see that played out in the facilities on a regular basis, where we have families that were doing okay, or at least were staying apart. Mom or dad goes into a facility, and now everybody's fighting to, in a Freudian manner, fix everything or show the power that they have. And that's why a power of attorney over health care is extremely important for the parent to have made that decision. But we'll still have kids coming along saying, yes, but, that's not what she wanted later, or he used undue influence, although they don't know that word, but she influenced him unduly. And then we start to see families torn apart. Kids who think that a power of attorney over health care means that they can interfere with relationships that their parents have. So we'll get a call from a sibling who is not the primary agent saying, I wanted to take my mom out to lunch, and the facility won't let me because my brother said I can't. They can't do that. Power of attorney over health care does not give you the power over person. And if mom wants to go to lunch with sister, no matter how bad you think sister is for mom, Mom's going to lunch with sister. And we'll have facilities all the time who are making these decisions because, for one thing, brother who's power of attorney is scary and paying the bills or something, but it's also a misunderstanding. So we are constantly re-educating facilities that they cannot interfere in personal relationships like this. And we are constantly educating said family member. If sister is truly a risk, and so sister shouldn't take mom out to lunch, it becomes a legal matter. You need a restraining order. So, or a conservatorship, and then that even doesn't mean you can make all their decisions. Those are some of the issues. One of the biggest issues we see with power of attorney over health care is the fighting over who ultimately should really have this authority and stepping in too soon to make decisions for them. And that's where it's empowering, too, to step in and keep these relationships from tearing mom apart or dad if possible. But undue influence is an issue. And sometimes that is something, if you really want to see your daughter, but your son you're afraid you're going to lose your son's love if you do, then parents can also start to play kids against each other, and we see that as well. It's a survival. They don't have much left in the world, so they're going to fight for what they do have, and it's understandable.
Thank you. Yes.
In regard to the power of attorney, I recently had 2 surgeries. One was elective, one was not. And they asked both times if I had a power of attorney for health care, which I do. But guess what? It was in my safe deposit box. The only other person who can get in that is my son, who lives in Las Vegas. So I would just like to urge everybody to keep one on hand in your home and have it available. When you have elective surgery, take it, but have it available for somebody to get if it's not elective surgery.
Right. I just wanted to add to that, please. Thank you for saying that. The place that the ambulance, when they arrive, they'll look for your documents in one of three places. In your medicine cabinet, because they always look to see what medicines you're on, at your bedside, or on the front of your refrigerator. In my house, I have a manila envelope with all of our family's advance directives and a big sign saying advance directives. You should give copies to anybody who might be involved in your care, your doctor, keep one in your car, take one with you when you travel. There are also services where you can post them privately online, and then carry a card with you as well. So please have it accessible, otherwise it won't work for you.
Great. Thank you. As a caregiver myself, and a hopefully responsible one, I struggled a bit with what those in my care might want versus what I think is right for them, and I'll give you a small example. Fred was home, Hildy had passed, and Fred was using this, I know this sounds stupid, but these are the little things. Fred was using the same straw every day. And I realized that there must be so many germs on this straw. And I threw the straw away, and I went and purchased an entire package of new straws. And his caregiver, who at the time had a belly button ring and was, just a different kind of gal, called me up and yelled at me. And she said, "This is something that's important to him, and you disempowered him." And she said, "You can't do that." And here I thought I was doing the right thing, and I realized afterwards I wasn't. I get choked up about it because I feel so bad. Here's this poor man, doesn't have much, but he had his straw. So, Kathy, maybe you can tell us a little bit about express wish versus best interest advocacy and its relevance to today's discussion.
Well, first of all, I'd like contact information for that caregiver, because that was awesome.
Yeah, she was wonderful. We still stay in touch with her today.
Yeah, that's very good. We have to keep in mind, we are surrounded by what are called best interest advocates. And that is those in our society telling us what we need to do to maintain optimal fitness and financial security. And the Surgeon General, he's a best interest advocate. He's got that little notice on the side of those cigarette packages that I doubt if people read. We've got our doctor telling us how much, fat we should consume and sugar, and we're surrounded by people who are looking out for our best interest, and that's all well and good. But when you go home tonight, if you've got diabetes and you decide you want a bowl of ice cream, and I don't mean sugar-free, you're going to do it. And you're not going to have somebody looking over your shoulder saying, Well, you might, if you have a wife or husband, kids, or something. But if you don't, you're going to eat it and you're going to enjoy it. One of the things that happens with the elderly, if they end up going into long-term care, which is the purview of the Ombudsman program, we are advocates for the elderly who are living in long-term care facilities, and I'll be explaining that a little more later. When you go into a facility, you suddenly are running on the schedule of an institution that is designed to enhance your life by keeping you as healthy and alive as long as possible. They are going to be telling you, or they think they will, and you'll probably let them unless you learn otherwise. They'll be telling you when to get up in the morning. They'll be telling you when you will bathe or shower. They'll be telling you what time you'll have meals. They'll be telling you what those meals will be. They may well be telling you what you're going to wear today. They're going to be telling you what activities to participate in, when you need to be where. They're going to be telling you if you can smoke or not, or they're going to be trying to. They're going to be telling you whether or not you can drink alcohol, whether you like it or not. If you've got a diagnosis of diabetes, they're going to be saying, your doctor says you can't eat that. So you have a lot of people telling you what you can do, when you can do it, if you can do it. It's very disempowering. And that is one of the reasons that the Ombudsman program came into place. We are what's called express wish advocates. There's a place in society for best interest advocates. That's your parents and maybe your children, if they're good kids, and your parents if they're good. But you also need someone who's looking out for what you want. An express wish advocate is one who goes beyond what my value system is, goes beyond what I think is best for you, listens to what you want, and then works to ensure that that happens to the maximum level possible. We have I do a training to staff about this disempowerment, this institutionalization that happens to people when they go into institutions, where they do become part of the process. To care manager, to caregivers, you may become, okay, you're a shower today. You become a shower. You become somebody who needs to be helped with feeding. You become somebody who needs incontinence care. You become processes. And you can become dehumanized. They forget there's a human being there. And we try to educate facilities about everything that seniors give up when they go into facilities. Maybe you give up the fact that every night at 8 o'clock you watched Without a Trace, and you had a glass of wine and maybe some cheese and crackers, and you put your feet up. Maybe you did this in the nude. I don't know. I'm leaving my value systems at the door. You've given this up. Now somebody's telling you, no, we don't, you can't have any wine. It's contraindicated with your medications. Oh, and that cigar that you used to have, no, you can't do that. Your roommate had, well, it's California, you can't smoke inside anyway, but your roommate has oxygen. So you've got all these things you took for granted. That sweet little Shih Tzu puppy that's your child can't come into a skilled facility with you. Might be able to go into some assisted living as long as you can care for it. You had all those things that made your life have value, now has to fit into the schedule of these facilities. I had an ombudsman call me once. I think she's in the room. Called me once. She was working at a board and care facility, and she was a little shocked because a gentleman had just moved in, and the administrator of the board and care had moved him in and brought a 6-pack of beer. And she was a little shocked that he had brought a 6-pack of beer. And I said, well, Ombudsman, is he over 21? Because if he's over 21 and he wants to drink beer, as long as he doesn't, do anything, affect the other residents adversely, he can have that beer, even if the doctor says no. We're not going to encourage it, but we all have the right to make the wrong decision, as long as we can make those decisions. And so that's what we do as a program, is we're always trying to remember that humanity and that personhood and give it back. Because when you go into a facility, you already give up so much.
And Vicki, you have a similar concept that you practice called the Platinum Rule?
Right. Just one thing to add to Kathy's. The good news is we're so lucky to be living now versus 20 years ago. We have organizations that are shifting nursing care in nursing facilities called the Pioneer Network, the Eden Alternative. There are a number of organizations that are creating what's called person-centered care. And that's what we're talking about, making decisions for others starting from their perspective. Because it's not about what I think is best for you, it's what would make you happy, what would make your life better when I'm involved with helping you. And that really fits in with what's called the Platinum Rule. How many of you know the Golden Rule? Right? Most people? Okay. It works really well if we're all the same. So the Golden Rule says, do unto others as we would want to be done unto. Now, I'm a hugger, so that means pretty much I'm going to hug all of you after this is over. Because the Golden Rule says I should do what I would want. I would do the same thing. This is the Platinum Rule. The Platinum Rule says, do unto others as they would want to be done unto. I'm not going to assume you want a hug, because some of you are like, oh no, I hope she doesn't come down my row. Right? Right? I mean, that's just the reality. I'm going to ask, would you like a hug? Would that make your day? And if you say, no, I'll shake your hand, or no, don't even talk to me, I'm going to be respectful, because my goal in the golden rule or the platinum rule is to show you respect and kindness. And so I'm going to say, I'm going to do unto others, but I'm going to ask you, what would you like to receive from me? How can I show you compassion? How can I show you respect? It's a wonderful rule that makes us each get what we need, but also treat others in a way that they want to receive from us. So my rule is, I ask. I don't assume about people.
Thank you. After our caregiving experiences, my husband and myself, we decided to purchase long-term care insurance. One of the key reasons, besides being financially prepared for our care, is that we don't have children, and we wanted to be sure that we had a plan in place of how our care would be handled. So, Carol, can you share with us some facts and myths about we heard a couple of them today already, but about long-term care insurance?
Absolutely. Well, I think that you're getting the gist that you've got to do some planning, and if you want to be in control or have some say over your life's end. The census definitely confirms that if you come into this life, you're going to go out of it at some point. So let's just all come to that common understanding. How we go out, we can't necessarily dictate in terms of our medical state, et cetera. But believe me, I talk to people each and every day who are in various situations, not even themselves or with their parents. And a healthy body is truly a gift. So don't take that for granted. Having said that, once you put a plan in place, it brings enormous peace of mind. You can get on with your life and do whatever you want to. But if and when that time comes, you're going to be prepared. Your dignity and wishes are going to be honored. Your family is not going to carry the horrific burden of being a caregiver unless you have that arrangement and there are other people that are going to step in to help them. One of the biggest misconceptions is that it's not affordable for the average person. There are so many different products out there, and I hope that you agree that a little bit of help is better than none at all. Think about it. Even if you had $50 a day to bring someone in for a couple of hours to help bathe mom or dad or prepare a meal and feed them, would that be of help to those of you who are currently or have been in the caregiving situations? I don't think there's a one of you who would say, no, that wouldn't have been of help. And it brings in people and services to help you as well. So the options are multiple, and I want to enforce that very strongly. Don't, like I said earlier, don't try to put together a plan after you've had a life-altering medical event. It just is not going to happen. The younger you are, the lower the premiums, and that does not mean that you're going to be paying more money long-term. That is not the case. The pool of money that's available to you right away in the people and services is very, very significant. And your premium dollars annually are going to pay to maintain that pool of money, existing pool of money, and watch it grow each and every year. Long-term care insurance industry has come a long way since its initial inception. And that's a good thing. There are a multitude of protective measures built within a policy so that you don't have to worry about being 85 and forgetting to make a premium payment and losing your coverage. That doesn't happen anymore. I've had people who have been 50 who have forgotten to make a premium payment, and we've struggled to get their policy back because they didn't have that protective measure in place. So as a consumer, there are so many safeguards in your behalf now, and that's the way it should be. The type of coverage available, more often than not now, is applicable in the home or in a facility at an equal level. So you have the right to decide, and depending on the situation at that time, you've got options. One thing I would like to encourage you to do is that if you think that going into a facility in the future might possibly be a part of your future, look at facilities now. Get an idea that if you were to move into a facility, what one would be your preference. Maybe that particular facility that you save a brochure on may have changed dramatically in 30 years, but at least your family has some idea of what was appealing to you and why. What triggers a claim? I want you to know that universally the definition is the same. So if you're here in California or in New York, Florida, or even abroad, the same situation triggers a claim. And that's when the doctor determines, not the insurance carrier, that you've had an event that's probably going to change your life on an extended basis beyond 90 days, and it's going to impact what they call your activities of daily living, or ADLs. Have you heard about these? Okay. There are 6 of them. There are bathing, continence, dressing, eating, toileting, and transferring. Transferring means getting in and out of bed, getting in and out of a chair on your own. When you can no longer do any 2 of those, and again, it looks like it's going to be for an extended period of time, likely beyond 90 days, that's when you stop paying your premiums and the carrier starts paying to help you and providing the people and services. That's very different from the healthcare industry. You do not overlap getting help and continuing to pay premiums. Okay? That's important for you to know. The only exception for going on claim is if you have the diagnosis of dementia or Alzheimer's, that automatically triggers a claim. My mother went from being independent, not doing too well, but she went from being independent. In 2 weeks, all of her ADLs were compromised, every last one of them. So there is help out there for a lot of people. You will hear that it's often said that those who are the best candidates for long-term care insurance either own their own home or have other assets and have $50,000 or more in savings. That is the rule of thumb, but there are exceptions, and here's one. I've got a client who's 63 years of age, is a single lady. She has children. She's able to pay her own bills now, but she's not been able to save very much. Excuse me. She's worried about the future, and understandably so, and she's been proactive, which is really commendable. She's decided to make the commitment, the financial commitment, to pay for her policy on a quarterly basis. So in truth, that insurance policy is providing the savings that she otherwise couldn't possibly amass. So she's put together a plan. Remember I said that people starting in their 40s are getting the insurance. They're even younger. My own son at the age of 36 got a plan. Why? He had a near-death experience and continues to do work that is very, very dangerous. And it just about tore the family asunder. We think he made a wise decision.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Bob, I'm going to ask you if you could, in brief form, because we have limited time, I want to make sure we have some time for questions. Of course, this is going to be hard to do, right? Yeah. Tell us about the terms will, trust, living trust, and make sure that all happens very quick and that we all can understand it.
30 seconds. Here we go. Okay. Well, we wanted to do those 4 terms because they are confused a lot, and I'll confuse them today. All right, a will. Will is a bunch of paper. It's going to indicate your intent of what you want to have done when you die. A will is a death document, period. You're going to indicate who's to receive your property, who's going to act as your executor, etc. Let's talk about a few of the misconceptions. Oftentimes, in a will, if an asset is going to go through a will, which oftentimes is an asset that's in your name, there is highly likely to be a court probate process. And the court, again, all of us said we didn't want to be in court. So if we have a will, and a will is going to be our only death document, then we may want to rethink that a little bit. Even between husband and wife, if you leave everything to your spouse, under a will, the requirement is that we have a spousal property petition where the survivor petitions the court very quickly to transfer all of the assets to the surviving spouse. And we have to get a court order confirming that. If your estate is over $100,000 and you're an individual person, that's our threshold limit for probate. So if our estate is $110,000, we're going to go through a court probate process. The people that you've directed to receive those assets will receive them, but we're going to go through a court process. One thing here, very important. Gifting to caregivers. we have that come up, that, oh, my caregiver's been with me for 10 years or 10 minutes or whatever. I'm Hugh Hefner, and I'm on 84, and I'm marrying a 24. Anyway, these things happen. The law is very suspect on gifts to caregivers. It's not that they're improper, except that legally we have to handle them a different way. So I just wanted to share that with you. A living will. Living will, real quick, is just a direction by you that generally says, I want to die in dignity and I don't want to have any heroic measures imposed upon me. So it goes on the healthcare type lines. Really has nothing to do with a will. A trust, I was going to play Monopoly with you here today, but I won't do that. Basically a trust, real quick, if you think of a trust as being a box, and you're going to create the rules of Monopoly. So this is going to be your trust, and you're going to create your rules, and the rules are generally, all the assets that I put into my box are going to be used for me until I die. At that point, they'll go to my spouse or my kids. So that sounds pretty good. There's also a trustee of a trust, and that's the person that's going to manage all of the assets that I put into my trust, and that person is going to be me. And there's the third party, a beneficiary of a trust, and that person better be me, because these are my assets that I put into my trust. Now, I've said all the time about the assets being put in the trust, and like Monopoly, if we don't have the dollars, if we don't have the deeds, if we don't have the dice, we don't play the game, right? So you have to transfer your assets out of your individual name into yourself as trustee of your trust. So if I have the Bob Triplett Trust and I have a house, then I better transfer the title out of the name of Bob Triplett to Bob Triplett, trustee of the Bob Triplett Trust. Then those assets are in my box. Why is that important? Because when we go back to our good old 1,000-page probate code, there it says that the assets in our box do not have to go through the court probate process. So if we are court avoiders, the trust oftentimes is something to consider. And let's see, living trust. Living trust is basically the trust I just described. It is a trust that you create during your lifetime, as opposed to something called a testamentary trust, which is a trust that begins at the time of death, which is oftentimes found in a will. Done.
Thank you. Wow, impressive. Okay, what I'd like to do now is so we've talked a bunch about how you would know and the types of decisions that need to be made if you can no longer live alone. Let's talk about some of those places now that you might live if you can't live alone. And I'm guessing that most of the audience is familiar with, for instance, an assisted living facility. You may or may not be familiar with a continuous care retirement community or a boarding care. But Kathy, maybe you can take a couple of moments and share with us the types of facilities that might be available.
All right. First of all, I just want to say I'm jealous of Bob's visual aids. I didn't know we could do that. Did you know that, Vicki? And okay. Well, fine. All right. There are a number of housing options for the elderly, but it basically breaks down to two distinct types. One is the assisted living facility, which also can be called a board and care, and I'll tell you the difference. They both fall under an RCFE license, Residential Care Facility for the Elderly license. Assisted living facilities are typically larger, such as Grand Oaks, Atria Hillcrest, Castle Hill, the Reserve up in this area. Board and care are those small little homes nestled in neighborhoods throughout the county. There are a number of them, Thousand Oaks. They run off the same regulations, the same rules, but they meet different needs. A larger assisted living may be appropriate for a senior who is social and really enjoys a lot of activities and a lot of interaction. You're not going to find a lot of activities in the small board and cares, despite the Ombudsman program's best efforts to get them there. The reality is most of the residents in the small board and cares do tend to be fairly compromised with dementia, and that makes it a little more challenging. In order to live in an assisted living facility, you need to not require 24-hour nursing assistance. There are some prohibited conditions to living in an assisted living facility. So if you have those prohibited conditions, your next choice is a skilled nursing facility. That is the medical model. In order to live in a skilled nursing facility, which of course would be your last choice, you would need 24-hour nursing care and a physician's a physician's prescription in order to live in a skilled nursing facility. Just to kind of consolidate a couple of the questions, when we talk about them, there are different ways of paying for these two options as well. Private pay, of course, they'd love private pay. All of the assisted living facilities in Ventura County are private pay. We do not have any SSI, Supplemental Security Insurance facilities in our county. One just closed that was down in Oxnard. So in order to live in an assisted living facility in Ventura County, you will need to pay private pay. In skilled nursing, that can be paid for private pay, or for long-term Medi-Cal if you have a low income. So those are the ways of paying for long-term care. Now, or in a skilled nursing, and then Medicare if it's medically related, just to narrow those two questions together.
Thank you.
To let you know, we have an ombudsman in every facility in Ventura County that visits regularly. And due to that and them turning in those wonderful reports to us every month, we're able to keep information on each and every facility in Ventura County. So if you are considering some facilities, just call our office and we can guide you.
Wonderful. Thank you. So Vicki, could we save questions to the end? Would that be okay? Because we're on a little bit of a limited time, right? Thank you. Appreciate that. Because I think our TV time gets cut off after a period of time, and I want to make sure our viewers at home get all the good content. Not today. Oh, great. Wonderful. Okay. Okay, sky's the limit. Ma'am, would you like to ask your question then? Go right ahead. Hold on, she's going to give you the microphone.
What is the difference between the long care that we were talking about before, where you had explained that they tell you what time to get up, they tell everything. You have no decision making or choices. What is the difference between that and the assisted living? Well, I would know this. Even the skilled nursing, do they actually tell those people what time they have to get up? And
well, yeah, basically a care plan is put together, and they would determine when you need to eat your meals. There are certain regulations about how far apart meal times can be. They do have to be much more flexible than they may let on. And so that's where the Ombudsman program would come in. If you're somebody who you just aren't going to eat breakfast till 11 and they stop serving breakfast at 9,
then you're out.
The Ombudsman program's going to go in and we're going to see what we can do to help you get your meal at a more comfortable time. Assisted living is a little freer, but they still have scheduled breakfast, scheduled lunch, and scheduled dinner time. So, but most facilities will be flexible if you fight for yourself.
Oh, you can make decisions, like when you're going to get a shower and when you're going to do all.
Yeah, you definitely can. They are going to, through their care plan, they are going to set up they're going to try to set up their systems based on staffing and all of that. But then you have a lot more right to alter those than you might assume. And that's one of our roles, is to go in and make sure that you realize that and work with you to get things adjusted to meet your needs.
Oh, because the beginning, when you were telling that, sounded terrible. That you just,
you know what, it is kind of terrible.
Have no choice for anything from the morning until night, bedtime.
And that can happen if you don't empower yourself.
Wow. Right. And then if I could ask the lawyer a question in regards to the living will or without a living will. If one spouse passes away and in their property, let's say their real estate property, their home, and if it's entitled as joint tenancy in the title of the ownership, and if they have right to survivorship added in the terminology of the title, then would they not even need a living? And it's just the real estate that I'm calling about. Then would they even? Would the title and everything just go right over to the living survivor?
Right. That's why I said the title is a huge issue that we could do a whole seminar on, and possibly should at some point in time, because it's greatly misunderstood. In your situations you're describing, the joint tenancy would pass automatically from husband to wife. There'd be an affidavit, death of joint tenant, just a document, one-page document that would be recorded to show that you've succeeded to the title, and then you would own it. Now, so from the succession from husband to wife, in that situation, the will was not required. However, now you own it, and now you die. What happens?
Okay.
And just to clarify, I could be wrong, but none of this is a living will, correct? Because a living will is about your health care.
That's right.
Okay, just clarifying. Thank you. Okay, so sometimes some of us don't want to move from our home. So Vicki, what are some of the ways a person can stay at home and still receive the care that they need?
Oh, I love this option because most people would rather stay home, and there's so much help out there now. So you can modify the home. You can put in ramps. You can make the bathroom safer. You can make it so the space in your house is different so a wheelchair can get through. There's a lot of ways you can modify it. There are also mobile physicians now in our community that will come to your house when you can't get out. We're very fortunate that program is growing. There are fall protection programs and products. There are Meals on Wheels. We can hire caregivers. There's so much we can do. I'd like to give you a couple resources if you want to write them down to get qualified people who are specially trained in serving seniors' needs. Because lots of contractors will say, oh, I can do it, but that's a different department of the City Hall. But we want one that really cares about seniors. So let me give you a couple. The first is called the National Aging in Place Council. These are people who are specialized in keeping people home. They work with all sorts of other providers in the community. They actually have what's called a CAPS program, which is a Certified Aging in Place Specialist. The phone number for the national agency, which will connect you to the local people, is 202-939 1777, and their website is easy. It's called ageinplace.org. ageinplace.org. And wow, they have a great website with all sorts of resources. The second one is the National Association of Home Builders. I'll repeat it. The National Association of Home Builders. These are the contractors that make larger modifications, not just little details, but the true modifications to your home. Their phone number is 1-800-368-5242, and their website is their initials, NAHB for builders.org. And again, great resources, great ways to connect you. This last one is one of my favorites, and I'm always surprised how few people know about them. They're called Centers for Independent Living. And they're the ones that can bring in all the technology and the support into your home for anyone with a disability, whether you're old or young, and give you ways to stay home. They have hearing support, vision support. If you can't use your hands like you used to, they have technology that helps. They'll teach you how to use your computer just using your voice. I mean, what they know is incredible, and they have a lot of free products they can offer because they're federally funded. So you really need to reach out to them. You actually have a local group here in Ventura. They're called the Independent Living Resource Center, and their local number is 805-650-5993. For people who might be caring for someone in another state or town, you just type in Center for Independent Living and the local name of that city, and there are places that will just pop up on the internet. Their website is kind of hard to say, but I'll do the best. ILRC-TRICO.org. I don't know if, yeah, I know it's kind of a strange one. It's like ILRC, Treco. So good luck. I'll stay afterwards if you want to go over those again. The other thing I'm sure Kathy's going to mention, but we have a wonderful area agency on aging that has a whole panel of people waiting to help you in all of these categories we've been discussing today, and she probably knows the numbers. She'll give it when she gets her next turn, I guess. Uh-oh. Well, we could look it up quickly. Anyway, there are people out there that are waiting to help you, and they also sometimes know of funding options. Sometimes they know of grants or services that are available if you're low income. So please reach out. These are the experts, because you can stay home.
I'll make a brief comment that I also right now, your head will be spinning before I'm done here, but I am now caregiver for my mother-in-law who lives with us. And most recently, she had just come to us, she lives in New Jersey sometimes, but she came out to us right from the hospital and from rehab to us. So she needed a lot of care, and I had a conference to run down in LA, and I found out about a wonderful respite caregiving program that they have, a grant, 32 hours free. I had a 4-day conference. I had someone at my house from 9 to 5 every day, full-time caregiver, while my husband was at work and I was at my conference. It was one of the most blessed things that ever happened to me. So I would share with you that that's another opportunity. And as Vicki said, these folks can connect you up with all sorts of people. So let's talk about caregivers for a minute. Kathy, do you have any advice for people who need to hire a caregiver, and who can they turn to?
Well, I know we do keep a list. Oh, I actually did know it, but thank you. We keep a list in the office because we do pre-placement counseling. We do a lot of phone counseling for people who are looking for options for their parents or their spouse or whoever. Our goal as a program would be for everybody to stay home if at all possible. So we do have a lot of information. We have a whole list of agencies that provide home health. I know that one of the things you really need to be careful of, we have people who call us periodically and they say, I can't afford that home health. Do you have a list of names of people who will just come? People just come and, I'll pay them $8 or $10, or whatever. And we'll get those calls all the time. And we will say, there are a lot of concerns about having a friend of a friend of a friend come in and provide care. One major one that I think Bob was going to address is workers' comp, the workers' comp issue, and I think that would be really important for him to address, because that can really wipe you out. And so I will leave that to Bob to address. And then I've got something else I'd like to talk about that we kind of skipped over a little bit. I told you what the Ombudsman program does. One of the things that we do as a program is we are the advocates for seniors living in long-term care to ensure that there's no abuse, their rights are respected, as Nancy said. But I also want you to be aware that if someone is outside of a facility and they are at risk, if you are concerned about a neighbor or a loved one and you want somebody to look in on them, the number you need to call the Adult Protective Services. In Ventura County, we have an excellent program, and their number, the hotline is 654-3200. And I want to assure you that Adult Protective Services is not the same as Child Protective Services. With Child Protective Services, if you call in and they go out, they may take those children. Now, in Adult Protective Services, if they go out, they're not taking those seniors anywhere. So you don't have to worry about that. But what they will do is they'll go out and they'll do what's called a case management. And they go out with experts. They go out with possibly a psychiatrist, a nurse, and they will evaluate the home setting. And based on what they find, they will make suggestions, recommendations. They will find programs and services to help them stay in their home if that is at all feasibly possible. So I just wanted to make you aware that if you are concerned about anybody in a long-term care facility, call us. And our number, it's 805-656-1986. You can call and talk to anyone in the office. I'm at extension 12. But if you are concerned about a neighbor or a loved one, somebody who you feel is at risk, then do call Adult Protective Services. All they will do is help. And that's 654-3200, and you can make an anonymous call. and they're wonderful.
I will give you a brief story about Adult Protective Services, and rightly so. As I mentioned, Fred was in intensive care, Hildy was home. Adult Protective Services alerted, well, the discharge planner at the hospital alerted Adult Protective Services that there was a non-family member caring for this couple, my husband and I. And so she made a, surprise visit to the house. And actually it was wonderful because by the time she was done, she said, "You people are angels, you're a blessing," and I felt really wonderful about that. But she said, "Are there any concerns at all?" I said, "Yes. It sounds stupid, but Fred has a gun and it's loaded. And he's in the hospital, but I'm just so afraid when he comes home he might be a little bit depressed." And and she actually had worked with, I don't know, whoever before, and she unloaded the gun for me. And we hit it. And so I'm forever grateful to Adult Protective Services. They were absolutely wonderful, gave me a list of resources. I was brand new to caregiving, so it was a blessing. So it doesn't have to be a negative thing by any stretch of the imagination.
In Ventura County, we have a wonderful team of colleagues that we all work together for the seniors here. We work with Adult Protective Services. We work with the District Attorney's Office. We work with behavioral health. We all work together for the seniors in this county. And the number to the Area Agency on Aging, just so you can have that, is 805-477-7300. And they can also connect you with a lot of resources, one of which would be us. Yes.
So Bob, I'd like you to, for a second, if you could speak to the hiring an independent caregiver. When we hired caregivers for Fred and Hildy, they became pretty expensive. I mean, when we had full-time round the clock, it was over $200 a day. So, yeah, the thought goes through your mind, maybe I could hire somebody directly for a lot cheaper. But tell us a little bit about that.
Just very quickly, the law looks at this and says, okay, what are you doing? You're hiring somebody. Is this somebody an independent contractor? Or is this somebody your employee? And of course, the homeowner wants to say it's an independent contractor, so they can take care of their own taxes, et cetera. The law oftentimes will see that as an employer-employee relationship, which then, if they see it as such, and why they see it as such oftentimes is that because you're controlling when they're going to come to the house and what they're going to do. There's a lot of different factors that have to be considered. But if it's deemed to be an employment relationship, then you as the hirer are the employer. And so you may have employment taxes to withhold and pay that you're not ready to do, and also the workers' comp issue in case there's an injury, which happens a lot. Are you ready to take on that type of liability? So there's a lot to consider if you want to go out on the private sector and hire your own people.
A lot of caregivers who have hurt their back lifting someone they're caring for. Did you want to say something, Carol?
Yes, please. I just wanted to bring up the subject of the healthcare reform bill. How many people know really what that's going to provide you? Nobody. Right. And you know what? I'm one of you. But I did want you to know that if and when that comes to fruition, it's at least 2 to 3 years down the road. There is a good chance that it may not come to fruition at all. But I refer to it as the long-term care arm of Medi-Cal. The reason I state that, or Medicaid in other states, the reason I state that is it's a blessing, a true blessing for those who would not otherwise qualify for some coverage. But what it will offer, after paying into it for at least 5 years, you're going to have to pay premiums, is probably $50 to $75 a day in help. So it's going to be very limited, and there is all indication that if you can afford to put a plan together, that you should do so on your own through the private carriers. It will be more extensive, more comprehensive than what the federal government's going to be able to offer. But to recognize that the federal government is standing up and saying, we've got to do more to plan for our own futures. The government is not prepared, cannot prepare itself to shoulder the financial responsibilities and needs of all of us who are aging. It just can't be.
Thank you. As a board member of Senior Concerns, I can't not let you know that, for instance, if you have a senior living at home and you happen to have to go to work during the day, there's an adult day program at Senior Concerns, which is another wonderful opportunity. So you could have transportation, pick your loved one up at your home, bring them home at the end of the day. They'll be cared for all day. It's a wonderful additional program that's out there, and they work on a sliding scale. So. I have one more Fred and Hildy story as we wind down here. Fred was still alive, and as Hildy's illness progressed, she stopped eating and she stopped communicating. And we contacted her doctor about the possibilities of hospice. And the doctor was reluctant to sign the order, although he finally agreed to do it. I actually had the hospice company plead with him to sign the order, and he did. Hildy died 5 days later. Barely enough time for Hildy or Fred to reap the benefits of hospice. So, Vicki, there's many misunderstandings about what hospice is, what it provides. Can you tell us some of the services that are available?
Yeah, oh, thank you. I'm actually a volunteer with Hospice of the Conejo, and that's a wonderful organization that provides free support to families and those who need that in our community, so please reach out to them. They also have great grief supports for every age group, and again, that's all free services here in our community. Most communities don't have a volunteer hospice, they just have medical hospices, so we have a bonus here and also in Camarillo. Okay, so here are some of the confusions, and doctors are very confused. One of the reasons that they did not put her on hospice right away is because doctors don't always recognize death approaching. They only see the medicalized version, and they don't see a normal dying process. And they are so worried because to qualify, the doctor has to say, this person will die in 6 months. That's not really true. They might die in 6 months. They have to be sick enough to die, but that doesn't mean they actually have to die. It's not like, okay, you're on, you got 6 months. I mean, I had one patient that she lasted 5.5 years. Guess when she started hospice? Age 99. She made it to 105. So hospice is not necessarily a death sentence. I know 13% of people do so well on hospice because of all the nurturing and support. 13% get better and get off of hospice. That might be better than the chances the doctor is offering you with your chemo. Hospice has been proven over and over again to increase both the quality and the quantity of your days. So if you want to die well, however long that takes you, get that support sooner. And the sooner you get it, the more they can do for you. They've actually found that people, if they're married to a long-term spouse, a lot of times people will die within 1 year. You know, you've always heard that. That's actually true. But if they have even a little bit of hospice, the spouse doesn't die because they weren't alone on the journey and they're not alone afterward. So what does hospice provide? It provides visiting experts, visiting nurse, visiting doctor, visiting social worker, chaplain, volunteers, home health aides. They're not there round the clock. People think they're just going to come in and take over. No, they're coming in to help everybody keep going and manage the suffering or things that are happening. You get to pick and choose. Say you don't need a volunteer and you don't need the chaplain, but you sure could use the nurse and some of the free medical support that they're going to give. Take those things. And then as things change, if you need some more, they'll give you more. I don't know if you've ever had to go to the ER to wait for pain medicine. Have you ever been in like crisis and you're sitting there? How long is the wait at Los Robles right now?
4 hours.
4 hours. You're lucky. My community is at 6 or 8 because I'm down in Los Angeles. Okay, so 4 hours. If you're on hospice, okay, if you are, not you personally, you pick up the phone, your loved one calls, there's a 24-hour phone call. You call a nurse, and you say, you know, my dad's got a lot of pain. He's been doing fine, but all of a sudden he's not doing well. The hospice nurse at 2 a.m. will say, you know that little bottle of pills that we've never used yet? Yeah, I know, we already delivered it to you. You didn't go to the pharmacy to pick it up. We brought it to you just in case this moment happened. Go over there, take one of those pills, put it under his tongue, whatever the medicine is, and they give them relief immediately. They don't go back to the hospital. They don't suffer. That's some of the joy of hospice. And the whole family is supported because most people don't know what to expect during the dying days. The family is supported. We're there talking to them, educating them, helping them not just be the caregiver. Anybody at the caregiver in the room? You know that you're so busy being the caregiver, you're no longer the wife. You're no longer the son. You're busy taking care of everything. Hospice comes in and gives you back part of your life. A lady said to me that her husband had had long-term Alzheimer's, been in that situation, and the last few days he actually had to go to what's an inpatient hospice. Some communities have a place you can go. And she said for those last 3 days, because hospice was there, she could put on her pajamas, climb into bed, and be his wife again. That is the nurturing that hospice provides. Yes, medically you get hospital beds, medications, oxygen, a bedside commode, everything you need, but you also get support. That's why people live longer on hospice, because it addresses the whole person. You're not just a body, you're a person.
Mel, you had a question?
I'd like to, thank you, ask two questions. One, no one has mentioned something that's coming up, the CLASS Act, C-L-A-S-S. Maybe it doesn't apply to a lot of the folks here, but could somebody address the CLASS Act? And then after that, I have just one other point.
Thank you. I assume that everyone in the room understands the CLASS Act is being referred to more often as the Healthcare Reform Bill. So it was introduced as the Healthcare Reform Bill. The past act is the CLASS Act. And so that's why I was saying that at this time, nobody knows really what it's going to do for each one of us. It certainly is in turmoil, and there's debate as to whether or not it'll actually come to fruition. If it comes to fruition, it's at least a couple of years down the road. You're going to have to pay premiums for 5 years before you're eligible for any long-term care help. The daily benefit will be limited to $50 or $75 a day. It will be small. And chances are it's going to be more expensive through the federal government than through a private carrier. It's a blessing for those that would not otherwise qualify for some kind of coverage.
Almost in the Medi-Cal.
Correct, that's what I was saying, so I apologize.
There will be an income test, so forth.
Pardon?
There will be a means test probably for that?
You know, we really don't know any of the details, but the bottom line message is that from the federal government is that this is a very significant happening in our society in great numbers because of the baby boomers, if nothing else. And we've got to do something to protect ourselves.
Go ahead.
I think it was first person. Kathy. You mentioned something about Los Robles. I don't know if anyone is here representing Los Robles, but about the backlog and being in pain for 4 hours. Oh, I'm sorry. They just okay. I happened to had two unfortunate situations that got me into ER, and had never been in the ER here before. And maybe that's a message, but it goes like this. I think they evaluate risk. If I go in there and they look at they know my age, and they look at the condition, and I'm in pain, I can bet you it's not going to be 4 hours. They're going to say, who's at risk here? And I went, and maybe it wasn't that crowded at the time, but right after this auto accident, the first thing they just said, let's start immediately, CT scans and everything, and what's going on, and so forth. So I would think my experience with Los Robles ER for folks our age is pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, I love Los Robles. This was my community for 12 years, so I'm very happy with the services they provide. But the reality is that ER doctors are not being trained in geriatrics. So when you come in, they're getting some. I just heard an ER doctor give a whole presentation on this issue. We're more complicated the older we get. You know, and even as a woman, you know that your heart attack doesn't look like a man's heart attack. I mean, we're more complicated, and so we've got to be effective communicators when we walk in there. You need your paperwork in place. You need your list of medicines. Make sure your family knows your medical history, because you have to help them serve you. The healthcare system, and not just Los Robles, all over this country is very broken. And so you've got to be good advocates. Be prepared, have your documents ready, and make sure that when you walk in there, you are a partner with them. And make sure that you're having someone who will advocate for you. I believe that no senior should go to a hospital without a person with them, because you are vulnerable when you're not feeling well, whether you're old or young. But the wait times, it also depends on how sick you are. If you were in an auto accident, you're going to get in there right away, because if you come in by ambulance, you're going to get cared for differently at any, because that's what's called triage. You know, it's just the reality. So, you know, I just want people to have their needs met. And so I just want to empower you that you can be better advocates for yourself as well.
So, Vicki, I have one last question for you. Bob talked about some of the legal documents that you can put in place for end-of-life decisions and how they can be handled. But maybe can you suggest some other tools that might be useful to start that dialogue?
You know what? I forgot. I did bring a visual. This is my new favorite. You know what? Because when the doctor asks you, what do you want us to do? He wants to know what medical tests he should order, you know, how he should practice medicine. My belief on your advanced directives, which is your Healthcare Directive, which says this is what's important to me, you've got to tell doctors what kind of life you would want. Because would you want to live in a care facility? Would you want to live with dementia? Would you want to live not being able to recognize your loved ones? None of that has to do with medicine, right? How many in here would like to live if you couldn't recognize your loved ones? Just for everyone's record, nobody raised their hands. You need to write that down in what I call a quality of life statement. When you write your advanced directive, it used to be called a living will, you say, oh, yes, this I would want CPR, I wouldn't want these things, but then you write down a paragraph saying, this is who I am, this is what's important to me. You make it person-centered again. What's meaningful to me, what I would want to live like, what I would not want. Because then it makes you human in that doctor's eyes. So they can say, well, I can do all this, but she's never going to be able to recognize her family again, no matter what I do. Wait a minute. Let's talk about this. So make it real for you. Anybody who wants to go on my website, I have a resource on the resource page where you can download instructions how to fill it in a way that will actually work for you and the doctor. My website is the Caregivers with an S, path.com, and go to the resource page, because I don't want people to suffer. I don't want you to have to call the lawyer. I don't want you to have to call the ombudsman. Get it in writing ahead of time. This is a really cool new game. It's called Go Wish, and their website is gowish.org, I believe. Anyway, it has all sorts of things like, if I was aging or if I was beginning to die, what would I want? I would want to not be connected to machines. I'd want to be able to talk about what scares me. I'd want to meet with my clergy or my chaplain. I'd want my family with me. And they actually send you 2 decks of cards, one for you to use and one for your spouse or your loved one to use. And your spouse is supposed to go, I think this is important to you. I think this one is. No, I don't think you'd want this one. And then you compare, because you'll be surprised how people think they know you, but they don't. And then when you have your list of, I must have these are kind of important, and please don't do these, then you write it down on that advanced directive and you give it to your doctor. You can say, this is who I am and this is what I want that journey to look like. There's also a wonderful advanced directive form called 5 Wishes, which does something similar to these, and you can get that with agingwithdignity.org. .org, and that's another place you can document your wishes in a more humanistic way. Lastly, we have 2 other forms that are out there. Has anybody ever heard of a DNR, like a Do Not Resuscitate? Okay. Does anyone have an advanced directive saying, don't resuscitate me? Guess what? It doesn't work in the ambulance. Okay, so even though you've written it down and your family's standing over you saying she doesn't want this, the ambulance will do it. But we are fortunately, we live in a state that now has a form called POLST, P-O-L-S-T. And it stands for Physician Orders for Life-Sustaining Treatment. So that means you and your doctor have to have a conversation, because he signs it and you sign it together, There's power in it. And the ambulance, the EMT that arrives, they'll respect it because the doctor's name's at the bottom. It's a bright pink form. Most doctors should know about it. It's been in place for 2 years, but they still might not. You might want to go to the website to download it as CA for California, POLST, POLST.org. There's even a little brochure you can print out to take to your doctor to teach him how to use it. Okay? It's great. And there's a brochure for you to learn how to use it. You know, they're a wonderful resource. Anyway, it gets to document not just your CPR decisions, but your other end-of-life decisions. It's quick, it's easy to use, and it has power when you have no voice. Because you don't want me in the middle of a bioethics meeting at the hospital trying to figure out what to do, and then we call the lawyer because there's no one to speak for you and we don't know, and then it goes to court. You don't want that. Put these things in place. You don't have to say, no, don't give me stuff on this form. You can say, please give me everything. It's just as powerful either way. Yes, ma'am. Oh, sure, okay.
Okay, if they do resuscitate.
Yes.
If they do resuscitate and you have a DNR, can they remove you when you get to the hospital?
Okay, yes. There's a Supreme Court of the United States says that all patients are allowed to say no to anything. It's called the right of refusal.
Okay.
You can't necessarily demand everything, but you have the right to refuse it. So when they get to the hospital, you didn't have one of these because you were too young. This is usually for people who are really frail and elderly, heading that direction. If they get to the hospital, and they realize they've been doing all this for you, and they see your form because your child brought it for you, they are supposed to stop immediately. If they continue to do things at the hospital that you said no to, no feeding tube, no CPR, no antibiotics, whatever your no is, again, you can make your own choices. If they do things against your will, without your permission like that, it's called assault and battery. And this is what you can say to the physician. You can say, you know what, not only is this assault and battery, but that is a criminal offense, and it's not covered by your malpractice carrier. I have never had now I say it very politely because I like doctors. I am so grateful we have doctors who will still practice because their life is terrible. I mean, they work so hard and they're barely making it. You have to be so grateful. Say thank you to your doctor when you go there the next time. But they have the absolute obligation to respect your wishes regarding no. Okay?
My, Las Robles has my...
Advanced Directive for Healthcare.
Which they asked for.
Yes.
And yet they came up to me, they didn't like it.
Oh, they didn't like it.
Because it was too short and it didn't have all the... I didn't have enough coverage there, they thought.
Okay.
I just said, psst, and they didn't like it.
Okay. You know, I think there are better and worse forms, but it depends on you. If you are just, I don't want this stuff, short is fine. If you want to describe all the different ways you don't or do want things, please do that. You can add another page to your document. It doesn't have to just fit in the form. But if you're ever in a conflict in a hospital regarding these situations, everyone is entitled to call the Bioethics Committee. Did you know they existed? Mm-hmm. Yeah, most people don't. You pick up the hospital phone and say, I'm having a problem because my patient's wishes are not, my mom's wishes aren't being respected. She got CPR against her will. The family's in conflict. And someone from the Bioethics Committee will come in and help mediate and resolve that issue. It's a much better first step than bringing in the lawyer. And then if it doesn't get resolved, then you call in lawyers. Absolutely. There's a time and place. But try to resolve it graciously first, because that will be better served for you. Yes, sir.
My advanced directive...
I need to give you that. There you go. Otherwise, on television, we kind of just go to space.
My advanced directive and all my medications, my blood pressure, my weight, all of that is on my Evolution Grand Care system, so my son can go into the hospital if I'm taken suddenly to Las Robles. He can look it up on his BlackBerry. He can send it over to a printer right there in the hospital, and everything is printed out right in front of him.
Yeah, we are lucky now. There are programs like yours, the Evolution program, where you can document your wishes. There are a lot of programs where you can have a company store the information, and then you get a secret code that someone can go in and get it for you. The nice thing about electronic medical records now, which are in hospitals, those kinds of documents should be much more accessible. They're not looking for your chart. But, you know, there are always gaps. So I say tell everyone. I mean, I carry advanced directives with me to the beauty parlor. I carry them everywhere. I hand them to people. You should fill this out. And then I make sure I tell everyone my wishes. So because the chance of the person, say this is my best friend and she's my decision maker, we might be out to lunch and be in that accident together. I've got to rely on that second or third or fourth person on my list to be my decision maker. You must communicate about these. I actually advocate doing family parties where everyone sits together like a Tupperware party, fills out their advanced directives, and talks about these wishes together, because that's the only way it works. Whatever you write down is not going to help unless people know where it is and really what you meant.
Yeah. Vicki, to that point, and I'm going to wrap it up here in a second, I use the 5 Wishes document, and my parents live on the East Coast. My dad has advanced Parkinson's. My mom's his full-time caregiver. And what we did is I filled out 5 wishes. My parents individually filled out 5 wishes, and then we had a conference call. So it wasn't about, hey, Mom and Dad, as you're getting older, and if you may die, what do you want with such and such? It was about, this is what I want as an individual. This is what Mom wants as an individual. This is what Dad wants. It made the conversation really productive, and we learned so much about one another. I mean, I learned that my father wanted My Way played at his funeral, and I learned that my mother did not want one person outside of the immediate family in that hospital when she was really ill. So it was a wonderful experience for us. And I would highlight that this Thursday's Acorn, the Thousand Oaks Acorn, will have an article called Conversation is the Best Medicine. And some of the tools that we talked about here will be in that article. So that's my little article there. Okay. I'd like to stop here, if that's okay. I will leave a few minutes for questions. This has gone way overboard, but I think that what I'm hearing from most of the faces in the audience is that this was a lot of great information. There may be a few questions still, and I want to entertain those. I think there's someone also checking to see if the folks that are in the other room want to come in here so that they can easily ask a question. So, Andrea, question?
Not so much a question. I just wanted to make a statement because I know we're going to wrap up and some of you might be taking off. I'm at the Global Senior Adult Center, and as far as our advanced health directives and whatnot, Senior Concerns has advocates there every day, Monday through Friday, so you can actually pick up any healthcare directives there. We have lots of different support groups. You were talking about the hospice and the widow and widower support groups. We have those. There's a whole wealth of information, so don't forget, just because there's senior in the name, not everybody is 100 and barely moving. It's a very extremely active center. It is for those 50 on up, and which I am one of them, so I've just told everybody out in TV land. Anyhow, it's very active. Lots of things to do. Our newsletter is over there, and we're a wealth of information and referral and have contacts to most of these people and everybody else in the community and outside. So if you forget, you can always call over there and drive us crazy, and or we can connect you up with Senior Concerns with them doing referral and whatnot. So there's a lot of ways to get a lot of this information and to try and get some stuff put in order. So I just want to make sure you've got another resource that you can just walk into 8:30 a.m. to 9 p.m. Monday through Thursday and 8:30 to 5 on Friday. Great. So that's my little plug before I tell everybody towards the end all the good stuff coming up.
Okay, Nick?
Bob, I've been advised by a financial institution that a durable power of attorney for assets does not apply to assets that have been put in a living trust. Is that true? And if so, is there a way around it?
In your trust arrangement, your trustee will manage the assets in the trust. So in a typical husband and wife trust, the terms would be if husband became incapacitated, wife would have the ability then to manage on her own. So a trust has an incapacity element to it. So for those assets in the trust, they're basically protected from incapacity by your successor trustees.
That's an all or none situation, though. You have to have the person declared incompetent in order to, you say incapacitated. That sounds like 100% incapacitated. It's not like most caregivers work, where I'm taking on the capacity a little bit at a time.
Right. It would depend on what the terms of your power of attorney are versus the terms of your trust for the definition of incapacity. The thing is that you do have that incapacity protection within your trust, so that the trustees that you have named and the successors will have the opportunity to manage the assets within the trust box without having to go to court, which is akin to if those assets were outside of the trust by the terms of your power of attorney. So, does that make sense? So that the assets in the trust governed by the trustee, assets outside of the trust will be governed by your agent under a power of attorney. And you want both.
What is the document then that you need to implement the somebody becoming incapacitated as a trustee?
Depends on the definition within your trust.
Okay.
A lot of them will say 2 physicians will have to have some sort of declaration, which oftentimes we do. And you can get those declarations fairly easily. So it just depends on the definition within the document.
Okay. Jim?
Yeah, we've been talking an awful lot about some incredible resources. I wanted to mention that our senior services directory is kind of fresh off the press, and it's without a doubt the most comprehensive listing of services available to seniors that's out there right now. There are some copies behind Andrea over there in a box. I don't know that we have enough for everyone, but I personally believe that everyone in the county should have one of these in their pocket, whether they're seniors or have senior parents they're worried about. If we run out and you would like some, please leave your name and I'll make certain you get them. So I just wanted to make sure you understood that this is available to you and we have limited copies over there.
Great.
Thank you.
Question? The microphone? And you know, while we're bringing the microphone over, and Francine, maybe you can hold the microphone for a minute. This is taped so that people can also watch this weekend and then also on the internet. Could you maybe talk about that for a minute? Because I'm guessing you probably have a lot of friends or acquaintances that might find this information very helpful.
It will be repeated this Friday at 10 o'clock on Channel 10.
Okay, this Friday, 10 o'clock, Channel 10, is that Time Warner?
No, that's
Verizon?
local TV, local Channel 10, local TV.
Okay.
Also, anyone that has cable can watch it on Friday at 10 in the morning or 6 in the evening.
Right.
And if you have Verizon Fios, I believe it's Channel 3. It's also going to be archived on our website, www.toaks.org. And there's a big button on the right-hand side that says More Videos. Just click on that, find Council on Aging and the date of today's meeting, and you can watch it anytime, day or night. So, have trouble sleeping? Stay up. Watch it again.
Okay. Question?
This is regarding hospice. There are many states that have actual hospice facilities. And
I don't think that's on. Is that on? Keep it close.
Yeah, there are many states that have hospice facilities, and I realize the services of hospice. For instance, I had an aunt who was in the hospital, and Vitas came in, and there was actually hospice in the hospital. But as far as I know, there's no hospice facility. There's no residential hospice facilities, even in California. Is there?
There are a few. There's one in Santa Barbara. There's one in San Diego. There is one that is being developed here in Thousand Oaks. It's called Our Community House of Hope. It's still in the process, but what we're fortunate, it will be here someday. A lot of hospitals are now partnering with medical hospices to provide a certain number of beds in a hospital, because sometimes people's dying isn't as gracious as it should be and they need more support, or there's no one at home to take care of them. So some hospitals will have a few beds assigned for a hospice, and they'll get all those same resources, but it's a different kind of journey than a hospital journey. But we don't really have a lot to offer. That's why hospice comes to houses, to nursing homes, to board and cares, to assisted livings. It comes to you in our community. We don't go to hospice. But yeah, back east, there's actual facilities where you go to hospice.
Okay. Any other questions? Jim?
Well, I would just, my real question here is, how do we get you and Peter to be my caregiver? I think that's the secret here, folks.
You mean we didn't have that conversation already, Jim? Of course I will be your caregiver. Okay. First of all, I would like to thank our wonderful speakers today. Maybe we can give them a round of applause. And just as important, the Council on Aging for allowing this opportunity to share with the community all of this information. So thank you very much.
And thank you very much for a very good job. This has been a wonderful panel. We have a few more items on our agenda. You're welcome to stay. One of the things we're going to be discussing is what's going on at the Global Center, which is something we do every month because there's so much happening there. If you'd like to hear about that, we're also going to talk a little bit about RSVP. So you're invited to stay. Thank you so much for being here. And let's move on. David, would you take it from here on liaison reports?
Sure enough. Thank you, Jim. Thank you, and thank you again, folks, for being here. And we're here every month, so don't be afraid of stopping by. We are a senior advocacy group. We want to pass information that will help retain the quality of living here in the Caneo. So please keep us in mind. Jim mentioned the senior directory, and that is an important part of our effort. Okay, I know Kathy talked about this one organization that Nick Fotheringham will describe, the VCAAA. Nick?
Yeah, the Ventura County Area Agency on Aging and so forth is something that we've heard a bit about today because they have their fingers in a lot of pies. One of the, aside from the Ombudsman program, we had somewhat of a celebrity with us today who's left already. That's June Glassmeyer. She's our local representative in the California Senior Legislature, and she lives here in Thousand Oaks. And if part of the job of the California Senior Legislature is to lobby our state assemblymen and senators for legislation that benefits seniors, or at least cares for seniors, and they spend a good deal of time each year and so forth trying to identify legislation that is not already on the books and so forth that may be beneficial to us, and then promoting that in Sacramento. So with that in mind, I'll pass the mic back to Dave.
Thank you, Nick. Thank you. Another organization that was mentioned briefly is the Retired Senior Volunteer Program, and I'd like to have Marty come up and update us on what's going on there.
I'm just going to remind you that RSVP this year, as well as in the past, will provide you with income tax assistance at the Global Center and at the Newbury Park Library beginning in February.
Thank you, Marty. All right, you saw her once. She wasn't even warmed up yet, folks, but get ready. Here she comes one more time.
Okay.
Going over some of the global senior adult activities coming up. And again, she's digital. as well as analog, so she's got it covered everything. Take it away, Andrea Cobalt.
Okay, well, I will talk fast as long as you can listen fast. All right, so we're January. We also have a Global Senior Center Commission, which is a nonprofit commission for the center. Helps raise money, helps give some directions, helps plan, does fundraising, does a variety of wonderful things for the center and with the staff working together. But we are going to, certain terms are going to be up, so we are currently recruiting. And if you're interested in being involved and informed and having some fun and some decision-making and some fundraising and using great people skills, then please apply because those are due by Friday, February 11th at 5 p.m. And, pardon? Oh, the age, I do believe, is, what did we change it to, 50? 55. So it's 55 plus. So if you're 55 plus years young, please come and join us, or attempt to. It is a very fun group, and we do a lot of work. The next thing that's kind of up this month, pool lessons. One of our own guys in our billiards room is doing some free billiards lessons. So those are on Tuesday nights, starting at 7 p.m., and it's free. And last night, he had 14 people. And we were talking about support groups and a variety of different things. We've got a new support group that's starting off. It started January 4th, but it'll be the first Tuesday again next month in February. It's a dialysis support group, and that's for any age. There's been a lot of people that have been put on dialysis for a variety of different reasons, and they've been a fledgling group and outgrown homes, and so we've just kind of brought them in. So that's a new group that started, and we're being intergenerational with chess. We have a homeschool group that'll be coming on Fridays, starting this Friday, January 7th, from 1 to 2, and there's about 10 to 15 youth, ages 9 to 13. They know how to play. However, you can join in, anybody, adult, can join in and brush up on your skills because they still get 20 minutes worth of skills and tactics and whatnot, and then they get to play. So I think this will be a really good way to mentor, nurture, and or learn to play with some young people as well if you don't know how. Another thing, we were talking about investments and a variety of different stuff. January 12th, which is following Wednesday, is wealth preservation. So if you think you're losing money with some of your investments, learn how to stop some of your losses. It's presented by a really nice person named Gregory with Banker's Life. He will have some refreshments. Our Professors and Pastries program is back through Osher Lifelong Learning Institute and CSU Channel Islands, and they will be meeting Wednesday, January 26, 6:45 to 8:45, and it's going to be on Costa Rica, the Switzerland of Central America. So that would be kind of interesting and thought-provoking program. It's free. You do need to call for reservations, though, so we have enough seats. So make sure I'll give the number at the end. Prisma Drawing and Studio Sculpture, a new program that will be starting up January 27th. And you did talk about the Income Assistance Program through RSVP, and yes, that'll be starting up February 2nd and running through April 14th. And Wednesdays will be at the Newbury Park Library from 9 a.m. to 3, and Thursdays and Fridays at the Global Senior Adult Center from 9 a.m. to 4. And it is free, and it's on a first-come, first-served basis, so don't call for a reservation. That won't happen. The only things you need to do, there's only 2 qualifications. This one's a 60-plus year young program, or persons with an income of $50,000 or less. Then it doesn't matter your age, $50,000 or less, or 60-plus. And just bring all your supporting documents and ID and all that kind of good stuff so they can do it, and it's free for you. And Financial Safety in the Golden Years, that's one that's coming up in February, but it's the very first part of February. So this one's good. Become a diligent consumer to identity and avoid financial scams. There are a dime a dozen out there, and there's new ones cropping up all the time. So this is going to be really a good one. And it's really aimed at adults and caretakers, so you can learn about the recent scams, how to avoid them, steps if you've been a victim, because if you are a victim, you run around in circles. You don't know which way to go. You start calling everybody. So those will give you steps if you have been a victim. And also definitions of elder abuse, how to report it, and more. And we talked about adult protective services earlier today, too. I've called them for a variety of reasons, and they are wonderful. So. And our newsletter has most of those numbers in there. So you can get it automatically online at www.crpd, it stands for Caneo Recreation Park District.org. And then once you get to that website, you just look down the left-hand side, and all the different centers are listed, and you'll see Global Senior Adult Center, and you can click on it, and you can find about all our programs and forms and all sorts of good things. Other stuff besides the dialysis group, an acting workshop is coming our way. It was up at Hillcrest Center of the Arts, and they're coming down to our center, and it's on Thursdays from 6:30 to 8:30, so it's all levels, beginning through advanced scene study, character development, individual attention, evaluation, all that kind of good things. And last but not least, since nobody's brought it up, the Ventura County Transportation Commission is going to be meeting here for a Thousand Oaks session right here in the Oak Meeting Room, and this is going to be Wednesday, January 19th from 6:30 to 7:30. So if you have some transportation needs or some things you would like to bring up without being rude, just some ideas and fun stuff, I would suggest coming so they can look at further needs that do take place or might not be met here within Thousand Oaks. And we have a ton of, we have a ton of really good bus trips going on. So make sure you get online, come to the center, get your stuff. So there's some good places to go there coming up. That's it for my speedy talk. I take that back. Sorry. We also have a Parkinson's disease support group, and this is for people with Parkinson's, their families, caregivers, and whatnot. They meet the last Wednesdays of each month, so this month will be Wednesday, January 26th from 3:30 to 4:45, and they're going to have a program, Move It or Lose It, exercise demonstration. And there's a number here to call. Anything that I've talked about, if you need information, of course, you can always email us at GSAC, Global Senior Adult Center, at crpd.org. And that'll go to staff, and we can answer any questions, or you can call us at 381-2744. I'm done.
Thank you, Andrea. We're now at our commissioner comments. Do I have any commissioner comments? Harry?
Thank you. Thank you, Jim. I'd like to talk about our next meeting, which will be on February 2nd. It will be on reverse mortgages. So if you have any questions about what a reverse mortgage is, should you get one, what are the consequences, and please come in and bring your questions with you, because we have a panel of people who are knowledgeable on both sides of the questions. So just call in, no, don't call in, just come in and be with us that day. Thank you.
Thank you, Harry. Any other commissioner comments or special events announcements? I don't see any. I therefore declare this session closed.